Hello, everyone. This is Letao, your astrologist and your spiritual counselor. Thank you very much for joining this quick video. On Instagram, I recently received a question from a follower, and he asked me if I can simply talk about different type of cars that we usually use. Of course, personally for me, and also, for you guys, if you're thinking about learning cars and wondering what kind of cars you should use and you should buy. First of all, what I want to make very clear with you guys is that cars, at the end of the day, they are just a channel, a tool that we use to find our spiritual guidance. The cards themselves are nothing magical. They are printed in factories. They are shipped to you through, normal delivery guys. They're printed on normal papers, right? There's nothing special about the cards themselves. But what is really magical and the reason why we can use that for either divination or use that for, let's say, spiritual guidance is because you yourself, your intuition and your spiritual self will find hints or find archetypes embedded in those cards. And thus, with a question in mind, and when you're pulling cards based on your intuition, you will be able to draw the answers that you need, actually. Sometimes I do receive questions. For example, is it bad luck if I, buy my own card? Should it always be a gift from someone else? That's a fallacy. All right. So at the end of the day, they are just paper. That doesn't really matter where they come from, or it doesn't really matter, um, you know, where you buy them, either from a bookstore or from Amazon online, things like that. However, I do recommend that if you receive a deck, either as a new deck from a bookstore or it's from someone who used to use his deck as a second hand, you do need to cleanse the energy of the cards. Usually, personally, I would use Sage or Palo Santo to cleanse a card. And if I have the luxury, I will leave it under the full moon for a night. I would just let it sleep, right, and let it bathe under the lunar energy. And before I want to use it either for my personal use or for professional use, right, for clients. The second thing that I think we can address is that, what kind of car should we use? Majorly, I would say these days on the market and also very popular with professional readers, there are three types of cars that we should use. And of course, there are other types that they're more minor. I would say majorly, yeah, there are three types. The first type is called tarot, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of that. When people say using tarot, unless they're talking about just a general reading, tarot is actually not really about readings. Tarot is actually a system that in fortune telling or in divination. There are always 78 cards in a tarot deck. And of course, there are different types of tarot. For example, you might have heard of something tarot, right? Let's say the Golden Sun tarot, or the mystical tarot, or the Dog's tarot, right? So different authors, they actually make their own tarot decks. But one thing you need to know is tarot cards, they have to follow the 78 card system. And so in a tarot deck, there must be 78 cards. And out of them, there are 22 major cards and 76 minor cards. Once you get a tarot deck, you lay them out, all the 70 cards on the table. You will find the first card until the 22nd cards. They are called the majors, and they depict very important archetypes in our human psychology. For example, the first card in tarot is number 0, which is called the Fool. And the second card, which is called a Magician, and that's number 1. And then number 2 is High Priestess, etc., until you reach the last card in the major arcana, which is called the World. And you also have got the 76 minor arcanas, and there are not to say they're not important, but they are in terms of the energy, they are less powerful compared to the major cards. And usually, as readers, we tend to see major cards as more sort of like the universal influence with things that are a little bit out of our control. But the minor arcana is something that we have a say. Okay, we can use our personal power to either manipulate it or to change it through our own personal actions and our determinations, etc., etc. But of course, all depends on our individual reading at the end of the day. So that's tarot cards, all right? And the second type of cards that we usually use is called oracle cards. And oracle cards is more flexible. There's no rules in terms of how many cards our oracle deck can have. There are also no rules about how to use oracle cards. Each oracle deck author make their own rules based on their own spiritual practice and what has worked for them, based on their professional achievement and what they are feeling very resonated with, what they feel spiritual with. So for example, most of you guys know I'm also a published author, and I have published two different oracle decks. One is called the Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, which contains 40 cards. And the other deck is called Oracle of the Celestial Deities, and that contains 20 cards. And you can have a look in here. You can see the cards number are very, very different, and the systems are also different. Now, because I'm a mythologist, I love Roman and Greek mythology, and I've studied them extensively. So these two decks are based on Roman and Greek mythology. Now, when you go into let's say a New Age shop, absolutely you're gonna find millions of types of oracle cards, right? Maybe there are oracle cards based on let's say Egyptian gods, goddesses. There are oracle cards based on maybe dreams, right? Dream interpretation. There are oracle cards based on maybe the Chinese feng shui system. There are oracle cards based on animals, right? Maybe there are, for example, one of my favorite oracle deck is called this Animal Spirit Oracle. So they're using animals, right? To draw wisdom, right? And advice and guidance for us. And so compared to tarot, oracle cards are easier to read, specifically for beginners, because oracle cards message is very direct. Like, for example, on the card, it might just tell you success, or it might tell you wait, all right? Patience, right? Something like that. So if you're not a very seasoned professional reader, you can start with oracle cards because the message can be very straightforward. And oracle cards, you can also do a very simple spread. One card pull, two cards pull, or three cards pull. Usually, a good oracle deck would have a guidebook together with it, contained in the box. And usually the guidebook will provide you sufficient information in terms of how to read these cards, the individual cards' meanings. What about if you want to put them together in combinations, and what kind of spreads that you can use, right? For example, like what I said, one card spread, three card spread, or maybe six card spread, etc., etc. And the last type of cards that today I will mention is called Lenormand. And this type of fortune telling card is actually originated in France. These days, not a lot of readers use it, even though if you can master Lenormand, it can be very, very useful because Lenormand contains very, very simple and direct pictures. So for example, on a tarot deck, right, you might pull a card, let's say you pull a card called the Empress, right? So on the card, you see a lot of details there, right? So maybe the flowers, the position of the woman, the Empress, is she smiling? Is she not? What's the color of her dress? What's the symbolism on her clothing? What is behind her? Is there any animals on the cards? What do the animals mean, right? So tarot cards has a lot of symbolism, so you have to go very detailed and read things very carefully. But Lenormand's messages are very, very straightforward. For example, let's say a Lenormand card might says, for example, number one card in Lenormand is called a rider. And so when you pull card number one, it's simply just a man riding on the horse, and there's no details. It could be as simple as just a silhouette on the card, right? But you can tell it's a man riding on a horse. And Lenormand usually needs you to sort of like be able to read the combinations rather than individual messages. I mean, obviously, a single Lenormand card has much less content compared to a tarot card. But Lenormand, once you put them together, especially when you lay out all the 36 cards out, it can be a very powerful story that you are laying out. By the way, sorry, I forgot to mention, Lenormand always has 36 cards from number 1 to number 6. Number 1 is a rider, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until number 36, which is a cross. And so, however, what I notice is usually for people who like tarots, they don't like to use Lenormand. And for people who love and who are very proficient in Lenormand, they don't use tarot that often. So you can choose, right? I mean, if you are a new reader or you want to play with cards, I would highly recommend that you start with Oracle cards because they are simple and straightforward. The messages are very, very clear. You won't get very confused. And for Tarot and Lenormand, you can see which one you are more drawn to. If you like more like sort of like studying the very intricate symbolisms in esoteric art, you might prefer tarot, but tarot has a lot more cards. You have 78. That's a lot to memorize and also to intuit. The Lenormand has 36 cards, less, but it's very important to know the combinations, right? Because Lenormand, usually you wouldn't read them individually. Usually for Lenormand, I would do minimum 3-card spread. Sometimes I'll do a grand tableau, which is all 36 cards out. And that's absolutely more complicated, right? But it really depending on what you feel comfortable with and familiar with. All of those tools can be very, very useful. And finally, I just want to say that if you have decided to give Oracle cards a try, remember, you can purchase my Oracle of the Mythic Heroes and Oracle of the Celestial Deities, both from Amazon stores globally, right? So if you're in the US, you can get it from Amazon.com. If you're in UK, you can get it from Amazon.co.uk or Amazon Australia, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, etc., etc. If you have a very good let's say a spiritual shop or a new age shop near your neighborhood, they sell a lot of tarot cards. I'm sure you can also check things out there if they have stock, or you might even be able to order from them. Hope that explains the questions you guys have. Oh, by the way, one more thing I want to mention is when it comes to using all different kinds of cards, you don't have to only choose one. For example, if you have been to my personal reading session, you will realize that I use a combination of all those 3 different type of cards. Because for me, it's not about whether we are doing a tarot reading, right, an oracle reading, or a Lenormand reading. That's not the point. The point is that we are seeking guidance and we're seeking answers from our higher self. So it doesn't really matter what method or how many methods you use, as long as you feel somehow it draws you in and you feel like using that cards to or different type of cards together, right, to give you a more clear and holistic picture. 100%, I would encourage you to try. There's no dogma in spirituality. Set yourself free and enjoy the reading. All right, thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video. Bye.